But I realized when I looked back, it was really God's plan A. It wasn't
Yeah.
my plan A, but it was God. God doesn't have a plan B
Right.
for us.
He has a
Everything
plan.
is a plan.
How did you even get into this world of homeschooling and why?
Well, it's interesting. The story I look at where I am now and I think about the goals I had for my life back then. I worked at Walt Disney World as a marine biologist. They have an island down in the Florida Keys. We would go diving and fishing and collecting animals and spent my days playing with, well, not always playing with dolphins, but lots of fun things. I love the sharks. That was my thing. And when we became pregnant, my husband and I really felt like we wanted to be home. I wanted to be home with our children. And so my coworkers thought I was nuts. Why are you doing this? Why are you leaving? To do what? You're going to
Right.
stay home and change
Change
diapers?
diapers?
And I felt like, yeah, I am. I mean, but I really felt like God was calling me to do that. And then once our kids were old enough, we started homeschooling as if we weren't weird enough. We got
Right.
weirder and we started homeschooling. And again, I felt like God was calling me to do that. My husband and I both felt that way. But my plan A, though, was working a little bit longer. We had gotten married. My husband was actually still going to school, getting his degree, his master's, and I was working and wanted to kind of work a couple more years to be able to get him through everything. And yet we really knew we wanted children, and God blessed us with a child before we had thought about it, which was great. So we weren't disappointed, but it was a surprise. And I'm like, I was on this little track, and
Right.
then boom, God said no. And I considered a promotion. I say now I got promoted to motherhood, but it was not my plan A, not my initial plan A. And so I realized that I had to change my thinking about this because I had what I thought were goals, and God did something different.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the trajectory that I was on, in learning what is it you have for me? What are my goals? Am I just the diaper changer of the family, or what? And so that's kind of the little background of how I got into this and how I had to deal with this for myself.
Yeah. Um, it's funny because of course, I've talked about this on the podcast lots and lots of times. I never planned to homeschool, but interestingly, I didn't have a plan other than that. Like I didn't have a goal except that I knew I wanted to be a wife and a mom. Like that was my whole goal, was to be a wife and a mom. Homeschooling was just not part of that puzzle for me. And so what was it about homeschooling that drew you to decide to homeschool your kids? Because you said, of course, and I could see, that your coworkers would be like, you want to do what? And
Yeah.
maybe even your family. I mean, clearly you were well educated and had a great career. I mean, how many people get to play with dolphins and sharks? I mean, that's crazy. What was it that drew you to homeschooling your kids?
We just met a couple of families who were homeschooling, and we're just enamored with their children. We were impressed by their how much they knew, their eloquence, how easily they spoke with other adults. They were a joy to be around,
Mhm.
and that's what we wanted for our children. So, like many, I started saying to myself, "Well, I can't ruin preschool. Let's try
Right.
that." I
Yeah.
know my colors and numbers, but it just slowly every year we started doing more and more, and I fell in love with that. And I started to see the blessings of it as we were doing it,
Yeah.
even beyond academics, way beyond academics. I
Yeah.
mean, really, academics were secondary when I look back at the value of this lifestyle. But I still didn't feel like I was, what was my purpose in this?
Yeah.
And it is just interesting to see with perspective now what God was doing. Um, First of all, it was not for the rest of my life, right? I was leaving the career mode into mom homeschooler mode, thinking it was a sideline. But I realized when I looked back, it was really God's plan A. It wasn't
Yeah.
my plan A, but it was God. God doesn't have a plan B
Right.
for us.
He has a
Everything
plan.
is a plan.
Right.
I know the plans I have for you, right?
Right.
His plan is plan A. We have to discover what that is as he impresses on us and puts things in our lives. So it was still God's plan A. And I'm like, what are you doing with my life? I remember thinking we had two children. That, my kids came at 2 years apart. So our first two, I had a 2 year old, a newborn, and I was like, all I was doing was changing bodily
Right.
fluids coming out of kids. I mean, that was, and then putting stuff in their bodies,
Right.
feeding them and I was like, is this my life? Is this it for the rest of my? And you know what? That was a blink compared
Yeah.
to what I've done since then, right? we know it feels like those days will last forever. But that perspective, I realized this is not the rest of my life. I'm not being put off or sidelined. So Lord, since this is a continuation of your path, what are you doing in me through this experience? And I want to encourage all the moms out there, particularly, God is doing something extraordinary in you through this. You may feel like you're just a this or just a that, and you're not good at this and you're not good at that. And some days you really, you love your children, but do you really like them sometimes?
Right.
I don't know, right? And so it can be frustrating and hard, but God is doing something extraordinary in you through this process. We always say, you're raising children to change the world, but God's doing something in you to change the world too.